Opportunity doesn't always knock. Sometimes it dares you.
If you really want to be successful in the U.S., you want to build the culture, you want to build the team, you want to build SureWorks, there's really no other way to do this thing. You move down there and you take it on and grab the bull by the horns and go.
This week, we're speaking with Chris Baby. Chris has spent over 15 years shaping and scaling one of North America's most dynamic industrial supply businesses, SureWorks, a protective equipment supplier. He served as CEO for more than a decade before stepping aside to lead strategic mergers and acquisitions for the growing organization.
It took me probably a couple of years to convince them that, listen, we have an opportunity to pivot this majority tool and equipment company to be just the opposite and move into a high growth, high CAGR, a regulated, one that will continue to change and evolve space of safety. And that's kind of how the journey of SureWorks really started in earnest.
This is Ordinary Greatness. It's a show about real people who achieved great things and the lessons they learned along the way. Whether you are just getting started on your career journey, considering a change, or interested in hearing stories of leaders who have made it, this is a show for you. I met up with Chris in Chicago, where he lives with his wife and 3 kids, to talk about taking the leap from engineering and operations to something bigger.
Take us back to the beginning, just like how you grew up, with the family life, this kind of thing.
My dad was a teacher, mom was a nurse. Grew up usually in rural parts of Ontario. Grew up in kind of central and northern Ontario. And then I went to university in Hamilton, Ontario. Went to McMaster University, got my mechanical engineering degree. And then...
Is that by design? Like, how do you decide to try to be a mechanical engineer?
It's so funny. I remember being in high school and not knowing what the heck I wanted to do with my life. And I think a lot of kids are like that. Very good at math and science. And so it was my guidance counselor. And my dad was a teacher and then a principal. So, he could help guide. But my guidance counselor said, why don't you go into engineering? And I'm like, what the hell is engineering? Back then, right? Yeah, sure. And now I think it's actually, there's a little more known around what engineers do and how they contribute to society. Yeah.
Well, Tony Stark's a mechanical engineer, right? So
yeah, there you go.
What hooked you early on the mechanical engineering? What do you say? Okay, yeah, this was good for me.
I didn't enjoy the electrical. It was, very abstract and complex. I enjoy things I could see, watch, feel, and understand intuitively, whether it's working with systems or flows or so. I kind of enjoyed it. So I said, okay, here's the path I want to go, and went into mechanical engineering. As I went through university, I knew business and finance and entrepreneurship and running. I knew I enjoyed it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to graduate with my engineering degree. Maybe I'll do an MBA right after. You can't. You have to work for a period. So ultimately, I decided to go into the workforce and never got my MBA, but I essentially got it through my work career as I navigated through different levels and running different businesses and then ultimately becoming the CEO. And you have essentially it's an MBA on the ground, real time.
Given what your parents did for a living, where did the business thing come from? I mean, did you work like summer jobs or?
Yeah, I don't know. I always found, entrepreneurs always inspired me. I thought maybe I could become an entrepreneur, but my career didn't quite lead there. But where it led, and maybe a little history about my university days. When I was at university, I was getting my way through. Like most kids, I was working cook, I was working as a waiter, et cetera, trying to get my way through paying for college.
Sure.
Mom and dad didn't.
Yeah.
We had a good life, but there wasn't a lot of money to go. So we had to pay for ourselves going through school. And between my second and third year, I thought, you know what, I better figure out and get some sort of engineering associated job where maybe I could put it to use, right? So get some experience. So I applied for a job. I was living with mom and dad in Parry Sound, and I applied for a job. And this is kind of this path of you never know where things will lead. It was in the paper. It was with a company called Domtar. You know Domtar, big forest products company, and it was at a particle board manufacturing facility in Huntsville, Ontario. It's about an hour drive away. I applied. Lo and behold, I got the job, got the interview, got the job. So that summer, I worked as a quote-unquote student engineer, student technician. The next year, between third and fourth year, my boss, who was the plant manager or plant engineer, moved to Bancroft, Ontario, which is kind of north of Kingston, and kind of in between Kingston and Ottawa, middle of nowhere. He had moved to, there's a big mothballed particle board manufacturing facility that he went to help start up, and he called me and said, hey, this summer, you want to come help me get this thing going? And I'm like, oh, okay. So that summer between third and fourth, I went and worked, and he was gracious enough to allow me to work kind of long hours, 4 days a week, travel home to Parry Sound on the weekends, 3-day weekends, back and forth, and away we go. So I graduate in, I don't know, it was 95, 96, and I need work. So I called him and I said, listen, I'm looking for work. I know you've started up the mill. Is there anything there? He said, listen, I can't give you a full-time job, but what I can do for you is bring you in on a contract. Maybe we'll give you a year contract. We need some help. We're doing some capital expansion on the facility we just started up. So I went back over there and started to look for work while I was working there, and landed a job in Alberta, in beautiful Rocky Mountain House, Alberta. They were building a engineered wood products facility, and went out there. Never had been further west than Sault Ste. Marie at that point, and Western Canada, here we come. And that's kind of my journey started in the forest products industry there. And then I got to enjoy, we had a one and first of its kind. It was a continuous microwave preheat LVL facility in Alberta, in the middle of nowhere, Alberta. All the machinery was German-based. And so we started that thing up. And there was a couple, they were starting up very similar mills, one down in Alabama, in Thorsby, Alabama. Got to help them start it up. It was a different company at the time. But then ultimately, International Paper bought us, so I was part of that group. And they had a 50% ownership in a company down in Australia called Carter Holt Harvey, and they started up very similar. So I got the chance to go down and help those guys start up the same mill in beautiful New Zealand, not Australia. Well, they were in Australia, but the plant was in New Zealand. So Forest Products got me into technology, but also started to spread my wings to see different parts of the world and work with different teams out there.
Easy comparisons. I mean, New Zealand to Alabama. I mean, those are like, Alabama must have been a pretty foreign.
It was funny because I enjoy, like, the team down there. Listen, people are people. It doesn't matter where you go.
When you grew up in rural environments, and
so working in Thorsby, Alabama, for me, maybe that's one of my strengths as a leader. As I think about things, is reflect a little bit here. It doesn't matter if you're sweeping the floor, if you're working. It doesn't matter what you're doing, or if you're a board member. I like to and can engage on all levels of the organization because we all played a role, just a different role. We all play a different role. And if we weren't needed, we wouldn't be in the organization. And so I always enjoyed getting out on the floor and spending time with the people in the mills. And it was harder as a CEO today with our business that is, although we're getting more into manufacturing, but you start getting this globally based, diverse business all over the place. It's harder without traveling. But when you're at a manufacturing facility, day in, day out, you can get really intimate with your employees, get to know them, and be a part of, a fun journey together day in, day out.
Chris spent years building teams and operations in the forest products industry. He helped bring a massive greenfield mill online from the ground up. At the time, it was the largest of its kind in the world. Construction project even earned recognition for its safety record. Then the financial crisis hit, and even the strongest businesses felt uncertain. Living in rural Canada, he started to wonder what the next chapter might look like. That's when an unexpected opportunity came his way. A move into sales, marketing, importing, and something called virtual manufacturing. Chris didn't know it at the time, but this move would reshape his entire career.
I got a call, and the conversation went, hey, I know you're up there. I know this is way out in left field, but I got a business down here in Vancouver, and it's a really unique business. It's not about manufacturing like you're in or construction. It's all about sales, marketing, importing, virtual manufacturing. Would you be interested? And it's here in Vancouver. And I thought, I gotta look at this. So went down and took a look at it and I talked to Carla about it, got us back into the Lower Mainland, got us back into a bigger community. Yeah. And I thought,
did you have kids at the time?
One. had Brandon at the time. He was actually born in Vancouver, brought him up to, Ryan also got born. He was young. He was probably a year at the time. He was born up in Fort St. John and thought it got us back into the city and kind of closer to, nobody knew what was going to happen in the great. We were all a little bit, God, where's this leading, right? So it kind of got you into a little more stable, quote unquote, environment. And it's pretty cyclical up there, oil and gas, mining, forestry. So we went back. I thought, you know what? It's a chance to build my tool belt different. Sales, marketing, product management, importing, and took a flyer. And
what was it at the time? Like, what did you walk into?
It was a tool company.
Yeah.
It was purely, the brand is still around today, still a strong brand in Canada, the Jet brand. There was nothing about safety in that business. So that was another different, I didn't go in thinking about safety. I joined the business because I thought, okay, I met the family, met the founder, thought this is kind of an interesting opportunity. I didn't know at the time. I knew I was brought in to professionalize the management team. I didn't know they were thinking about selling the business and ultimately selling it to private equity 3 years down the road. But they were, and they pulled me aside probably 2 or 3 years into it and said, hey, by the way, we had a failed process about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, but we befriended this private equity group out of Toronto, and we've been in contact, and we're ready now, and we've come to terms, and we've agreed to sell the business to them.
Wow.
And
was that a little scary at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell's private equity?
Yeah, right.
I didn't, wasn't exposed because I'd been exposed to publicly traded companies and pure private company.
Yep.
Private equity was, and that's going back, 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Were you scared when you joined that? When you had 3 months into Jet, you were like, what am I doing?
A little bit.
Because family businesses can be tough.
Little bit. And they were a very private family, didn't want to share. Yeah, that's a great, actually, you're poking in somewhere I forgot, but because we're much different today. SureWorks is much different. We're much more open. We want to share how we're performing as a business, what we're doing, because it allows, I think, or I'm a firm believer, it allows people to understand the company, how what we do makes a difference, positively and negatively, the markets, how they impact things. So we're a much more open company today. But back then they were very, very close. Like people, they knew they sold products. They knew there were some customers. Nobody knew really about what's the revenue or what's the margin of this product. Like it was very tight. And that wasn't going to change with them there.
I feel like that's a delicate balance. I'd love to just stop there for a second and talk about that, because I think on the whole, it's a better way to be, right? To be transparent and bring people into the fold of what's happening. But then, is there a point where you're sharing too much or too much of, of the burden, with people that maybe are going to get distracted by these things? Like, is there a fine line there?
I think there's a fine line around sharing what they can impact and have influence over.
Okay.
Maybe certain things they can't. Now, I say that, and what we will share today with our team, because people kept asking me, how's the business in Europe doing?
Yeah.
How's the business in the US, the Canadian team? So we do share kind of revenue trends with them because they're curious, because they're part of a global entity and they want to know how their peers are doing. I think that's healthy. I think that shows, maybe there's some internal competition, but I think it just shows how the business is performing. You're right. Maybe there's certain things that could be distracting or too deep that you don't share. Some of the intimate financials, even things like, we'll talk about cash flow and how important it is with the business, but the intimacies of it, maybe not.
Yeah.
So you're right. There is a line, but I would say I push that line more around share more than less. The more people know and understand, the more effective I think they can be with the information.
Not long after joining the company, Chris began to advocate for a bigger future for it. He'd seen firsthand just how much time, effort, and money heavy industry invested in keeping their people safe. He started to wonder if that focus on safety wasn't actually an opportunity, but persuading the board and the private equity owners to make this shift took more than a few tough conversations.
We had bought a couple businesses, both in Vancouver in what I'll call the high-vis protective apparel side, Pioneer Protective products in Jarvis Imports. And that would have been in 2010, about a year after I joined the company. It was still a smaller part of the overall business, probably like 20%, maybe 30%. But when the private equity guys bought us, they only really knew the tool and equipment because they'd looked at that business as a tool and equipment business for 5 years prior. So they thought, okay, we got this safety thing, whatever. We'll take it along. It comes with the ride. We like the profile. And it took me probably a couple of years to convince them that, listen, we have an opportunity to pivot this purely or majority tool and equipment company to be just the opposite and move into a high growth, high CAGR, a regulated one that will continue to change and evolve space of safety. And that's kind of how the journey of SureWorks really started in earnest. It was convincing. And thankfully, they agreed. And as they saw what we were doing and allowed us to acquire some smaller safety brands and PP business, that was kind of the start of the journey. And we were in Canada at the time. We had a small little business, AFF, down here in the U.S. It was automotive lifting, but 95% of the business was in Canada. And in 2015, we had the chance to buy a business here in Chicago. We're doing the podcast here in Chicago today. So in a company called Selstrom Manufacturing, kind of a sleepy company. One of the original founders of eye protection and face protection, back in the 20s, it was all blown glass. And they were like one of the original pioneers of PP products. And over time, the journey, it was a family company and it got a little bit stale, but we had the chance to buy the brand and access to the U.S. marketplace. And I remember at the time, my chairman and I sat down, Robert Blair, and hopefully Robert listens to this. And he said, Chris, if you really want to be successful in the U.S., you want to build the culture, you want to build the team, you want to build SureWorks, there's really no other way to do this than you move down there. And you take it on and grab the bull by the horns and go. And I thought, holy Christ, that's provocative but thoughtful. So there's a mentor, challenging you, but saying also, if you do it right, this could be fantastic for you and your family. You get exposure to a different country. You get your green card.
Was it a tough sell at home, or was it?
Well, it was when I called Carla to talk about it, because we had a board meeting. We were looking to acquire this business, and we were in the process, and it looked like we were going to get it.
Yeah.
And so I called her, and I had the conversation. Carla's been great, right? I got her up to Fort St. John, drug her back to Vancouver. Beautiful. Vancouver in the summer?
Sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Winter, a little bit rainy, but summer's beautiful. I said, what do you think about moving to Chicago? She's like, Chicago? I've only ever been there once. I don't.
Yeah.
She was good. She said, hey, if you think this is what we need to do, it was probably the hardest on the kids.
Sure. How old were they at the time?
So easy on Meg. She was like 3, 4.
No, that's
Ryan was about 7. So, but he was into hockey, had his friends and stuff. That was tough. He outwardly was probably the most upset. Brandon was in, he would have been about, 9 at the time or 8.
Yeah.
Hardest on him because he kind of, especially the transition, he went from an elementary school that went to 8 and he got brought down into a middle school here where it's like a high school, you're running around.
Sure,
and it was mid-year. It was like we had to move in November.
Tough,
So that was really tough on him.
Did that result in some guilty overpriced trips to Disney or something like that?
Yeah. There was some, that first year and a half, it was and, culturally, it's not, honestly, Chicago reminds me of Toronto. So I went to Mac.
Okay.
I grew up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's kind of like a Midwest.
Yeah.
Toronto has that Midwest feel. Different than Vancouver. Vancouver is much more Seattle, little West Coast. But culturally, it was not much different, but it was different, right?
Chicago was a big adjustment for the family, but it became home. They put down roots there. Meanwhile, Chris continued building his career at SureWorks. He helped the company grow into a major player in protective equipment and safety gear. And as the business expanded, so did he. He went from plant manager to general manager and eventually CEO. Those were the years that deepened his leadership approach. He learned to manage himself, to stay steady under pressure, to read the room, and understand what his team needed. even when they didn't always say it out loud.
I think for sure in my younger days, I read, especially when I first became the plant manager and then general manager. I remember reading a ton of, listen, we got training, leadership training and guidance. All these bigger companies had good programs, but I had read a lot and ran into a lot of different personalities and characters that probably, well, they did. They challenged me.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I would say I was much more, I could get intense a little more quickly. And I'd say I'd much better have learned how to manage my emotions inwardly to not, negatively impact the environment or the people that I'm working around. It was harder, and that took some probably learning on the job. And listen, I was never I've always been more of a collaborative type individual, but when you're younger and you're going fast, you can sometimes get a little emotional, and that can take the best of you. It still can get me today, and I got to be careful. It's like the old saying, like, if you get an email or something, read it, think about it, go to sleep, get up in the morning. And I still have to do that today with certain things. I'm sure everybody probably does because we're human. There's an element of emotion, pride, or whatever it is inside of us.
I remember somebody telling me once, sometimes it just feels really good to send that email. So send it to someone else. Like, send it to someone you can trust. So, like, write the email you really want to write and just send it to somebody that you know and trust, a buddy. And
freaking great words of wisdom.
It's a great idea, actually.
Mine go into draft, and then sometimes they get deleted, or most often they get edited, and they get. But today, I'm less like, I think, in the heat of my career. But I think we're all wired that way to initially kind of have that knee-jerk reaction. Back to leadership and so a lot of reading, learning.
Do you remember any of the books you read? Sorry,
I probably read every single leadership book back in the day from Jim.
What would have been the big bookstore? Like, would you were going you're walking down the Barnes and Nobles at that time, or no? Earlier, yeah.
That's exactly what it was.
And I love that because I don't think people always admit to things like that. I think people have this air, like it was just kind of like who they were. And I'm more like you. Like I'm running to a book is a pretty early solve for me.
So, and I've moved now over time to listening to books, audiobooks, and because I can do it when I'm biking, I can do it when I'm working out, I can do it when I'm in the car. So I've kind of evolved. So I don't, I read business stuff all the time, but I can remember. It's funny, Carla and I were doing a little clean out of my office, and I have all the books that I've collected over, and it's
dusting
quite
off the Peter Drucker or whatever.
It's all and it's funny. Some of them are, the 10 Habits, and but some of them are innocuous books, just about, maybe it's about situational leadership, maybe it's about, and it's just different things that I picked up and saw, and so you'd flip through and read it, and everything. You forget probably 90% of it by the time you're done, but you'll retain 10%. And it reminds you, it continues to remind you of things.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm in my early 50s now, I'll continue to learn and, how to be better. We all will until the day I don't think you stop learning.
All right, I took you a little bit off track of how you're evolving as a leader. So I want to make sure we finish that off.
Yeah. So, I think so. I do think you evolve over time. I think you can hone your leadership skills. I think as you get, maybe the organization takes over the demeanor and the temperature of the leader, no doubt about it. So whether you're the CEO, the organization feels it. I learned that at a young age when I was, shift supervisor into a production manager into a plant manager. And I don't know why, but that's how we operate. And I think as a CEO, you'll take on the characteristics of your board and of, that's just kind of the way that, and I think that's probably a little bit how our capitalist system is made to work too, in some ways, right? So I think I just evolved over time as a leader. I would say I've always had the instincts around trying to read people, be empathetic on, what maybe somebody's going through. I probably learned over time that just because somebody's acting in a certain way, you don't quite know exactly what's going on in their home life. And maybe as you get older, you go through some of those circumstances yourself that you go, and you're not yourself for a period because somebody's sick or something happened, or, there's, tension with your spouse, whatever it might be. and you learn that those things actually do impact you at work. So try to read people and especially if it's one-off. So you I think those types of things evolve with you as a leader too, as you go through. And I think they've evolved with me as well.
Of those lessons you've learned, what do you find most frequently you're passing down to young people? Like if you're, the people in their 20s that are just starting out.
Probably for me, it's back to one of the things I'll always coach the team on is, again, situational leadership. Everybody's different. Everybody's at a different stage in their career, in their lives. So you can't have the same recipe for every one of your reports. Everybody that reports you got to kind of manage to their current state and to what strengths they have and opportunities and lean into those. So I think that's one of the things I've learned and I try to impart with other leaders as they come up. I think being empathetic as a leader, I think that's really helpful because you try to put yourself in the shoes of others. I don't care whether you're a CEO or even at home or with others. Like, I think even politically, it's probably helpful if we can be a little bit, get into other people's shoes and get an understanding of where they're coming from. I think that's healthy. So try to impart that with my team or those that I can influence. And I'd say have a little bit of fun too.
Yeah.
One of the things that you're going to be, your work life's like a third of your waking hours. Have some fun while you're at it. So yes, it's serious work. Yes, we never want to get anybody hurt at work, and our business, we're trying to protect people out there. Doesn't mean you can't laugh at a joke. Doesn't mean you can't have a little bit of fun with it. You can't celebrate successes. So enjoy those, because if you don't, it could be a long day and it could be a very long.
Does anything stand out to you? How you demonstrate to the team, like to have fun, or like what
I'm probably a little bit. I'm a little bit of a prankster, jokester. So I probably have an element, even in meetings where, I'll crack the odd joke and try to do it tastefully.
That's
Maybe
good.
Early in my career, it wasn't
less tasteful.
Yeah,
That's
less
okay.
tasteful, younger group, but now, make fun of yourself and fun situations. So I think if you talk to people, they'll say, yeah, he's a little bit of a jokester.
Yeah.
There can be a lot of pressure to get decisions right, especially at those moments in your career when the stakes feel especially high and the path forward isn't clear. But Chris sees it differently. So I asked him how he thinks about those defining choices.
Always had a philosophy, and maybe I have it more today than ever. And in life and with your career, but probably in life as well, you only ever make decisions. There's no right or wrong decision. It's a decision. And it's what you make of that decision to go this way or that way, and how do you influence it for positive results for you, those you love, and then those you work with. I think that's how my career. So could I continue to be successful in the forest products industry and enjoying things? Maybe.
Probably.
Maybe. But I took a pivot and it took me into a completely different direction. And 3 private equities later, taking a business that was, $35 million in revenue to over $400 million. I've just maybe enjoyed the path in a slightly different way. So why do you make those? I don't know. Maybe there's probably a level of intuition that comes with them. Maybe it's a level of different. Yeah. You see something a little different that intrigues you. I haven't experienced that. Yeah. Maybe that could be unique and challenging, and that kind of motivates you a little bit. That's probably part of it too. So that's a good question. I don't know. Did I make any wrong decisions? No. Did I make any bad decisions over my career? Of course. I made some, whether it was moves or different things you did with a business or a team. We all do, but it's how you react to those, pivot, and don't make the same bad decision or don't make it twice, right?
Yeah.
Move and go forward.
I like that distinction between wrong and bad. I think that's a good insight.
Yeah, I just don't see, none of my career moves I don't think were wrong. They were just different. And were they all right? I don't know. They were just moves that I made, and the journey took me in a certain way, and I tried to take advantage and have fun with that journey.
And now, time for a round of rapid fire questions.
Take us to your favorite restaurant in all of Canada. What's that restaurant? What are you eating?
Oh my God, in all of Canada.
Or maybe your hometown.
I love the Keg. I'm a Keg guy,
Okay.
So do you know the Keg? It's a
No.
steakhouse in Canada. It's
Okay.
kind of a chain steakhouse, but
All right.
I'm a Keg guy. I like a good steak, and they still have a pretty good steak. So.
What's your cut of meat?
I like a ribeye.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a ribeye
I
guy.
do. Yeah.
Bone-in ribeye if I can get it.
I can't get my dad off the fillets. He's always on the
yeah.
fillets, and I'm like,
Yeah, bone-in ribeye.
Bone and ribeye. Absolutely. You and I'd be the same.
That's mine.
All right. What do you think you'd be doing if you didn't do this? Or what did you envision yourself doing when you were younger that obviously you didn't end up doing?
You're gonna laugh. I thought I would be a meteorologist.
Really?
As crazy as that sounds. When I was younger, I was enthralled with the weather and growing up in Parry Sound, and we were in the snow belt always. I actually thought I was going to be a meteorologist until I got into high school and started to figure out that that might not be what I want to do, but that's what, as crazy as it sounds, that's what I thought I was going to do. So there's something that probably nobody knows. I think Carla knows. That's about it. Nobody else knows. My parents actually thought too.
Well, being that into weather, maybe you should move somewhere that has good weather.
Yeah, I agree with you. Move down to Florida or Phoenix or so. Listen, we will have probably a winter home and a summer home. So eventually we will be somewhere warm all the time if we can. I grew up in Canada, northern BC. We've had a lot of cold winters. I like t-shirt, shorts, pair of flops or Birks, and that's a good life there.
Here, pick a topic. I'll ask you one or two more questions. Movies or music?
Music.
Best concert you ever went to?
Coldplay.
Ooh.
Here in Chicago.
Hopefully you weren't at the one in Phoenix.
No, it was here, and it was excellent. And second best concert, Bryan Adams.
Okay.
Up
Pretty
in
good.
Alberta.
Giving a little play to the Canadians. I like it.
Yeah, second best concert, Bryan Adams. That's
Yeah.
great. And he's like, it's him and a couple, but just a fun concert.
Chris's path has taken him from building manufacturing plants in small-town Canada to leading a safety equipment giant in Chicago. As we closed our conversation, I asked him what really drives results. For him, it comes down to culture.
Listen, being a leader, business is business.
Yeah.
You're managing people.
Yeah.
You're managing processes, but essentially, and you're in this business, it's all about the people.
Yeah.
I don't care if we're owned by private equity and a lot of finance stuff, and they're all worried about. The reality is you're trying to get a team to move and embrace a vision and a path and a direction, and people do that because they want to be part of a winning culture and a winning team. And what did they say? Like, organizations eat strategy for lunch, or organizational behavior eats. So take care of your team. Think about your team. Think about the growth of your team too. People, not only do they want to be on a good team, they want to see progression. Actually, that's one of the nice things about, as we've gotten bigger over time, it opens up more opportunities for people as they come into the organization to see, I can go up there, I can go up there. When you're smaller, it's a little tougher, right? Because you're blocked by just the natural course of not having the scale. But give people the opportunity. Watch, be careful, because you can over-promote somebody, and we've all done that before. And the challenge there is when you over-promote, it's hard to get them back into maybe that very good star status that they were in, and it usually ends in a not great way for both parties, so be careful there. Have fun while you do it. I'm a big proponent of that. You're going to be working long hours, so have a little fun, laugh, joke around. I don't know. And then back to choices and paths. You will not make a wrong decision. You're going to make a decision. Make the best of that decision. And if you feel like it feels wrong, make a different decision. Nobody's forcing us to stay. Thank God we live in the world we do, or in the countries we do. You can move. You can do different things. So you see people going back to school at the age of 40 or 50 for a different career. Good for them.
Yeah.
They've said, hey, I want to go over this way. And so I think that's another, don't feel stuck in what you do, but also you can make the best of your situation at the same time. Maybe those are some parting words.
This has been Ordinary Greatness. Subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes, and please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn to let me know what you think of the show. Catch you next time.